Right, my top tips for getting yourself prepared for pitching would be go through your business plan with a fine-tooth comb. Find people who who you know will give you really honest opinions. Don't be afraid to, you've got to realize that you will not get it right first time. Your business plan will not be constructed in the right way. It won't have the right financials in place. You need to I would say you need to redefine your business plan probably at least a dozen times before you actually know in your mind then that you've got it right. And you need to get your executive summary correct. That's really what people read. They'll read the first 2 pages. The rest will be given off to an accountant or a patent lawyer or someone in the business to go and see are the figures actually correct. Go and practice your pitching, and go and pitch to friends. Go and get them in a room and actually give the presentation as if you're in front of that investor you want to meet. Don't go for the first time pitch your idea to the investor as your dry run. You need to do plenty of dry runs before you get there. You need to be confident, and you need to know that your figures and your proposition and your assumptions are actually correct. You don't want to sit there in front of an investor and they've got inside information, or they've got even public information where they know immediately you make a claim that is actually not going to be right. And I think, quite frankly, there's no excuse anymore. We've all seen Dragon's Den. Go and watch it on iPlayer enough times and see why people fall down. You also need to be very clear that if your investor is focusing on one area and is going to trip you up, that you admit that maybe you haven't done enough research there and move the conversation on. Don't get into a spiral, because it's only one way. You'll be out that door. Admit that your research isn't done enough and you're going to go back from that. Admit that you haven't spent enough time on this particular core of it, but let me talk to you about the rest of the equation. So I would say, when you're going to go and see an investor, do as much as you can in terms of research about who this person is, what makes them tick, what have they done previously. You don't turn up in rubbishy looking jeans and a crappy looking t-shirt to someone who's impeccably dressed as the director of a company, or it's just common sense, quite frankly. But the amount of times I've seen common sense not happen is I can write a book about it. If you're turning for an interview, smart yourself up. Arrive on time. Stuff like the basics, which are really basic. But I think for investors, they're not going to make the decision on the business plan. They're going to make a decision on you as an individual. They're going to make a decision on your wisdom to get the right team in place. And you've got to make sure your team are aligned, your team are going to work and are going to present themselves correctly as well. Because when it comes to an investor meeting, fine, you as a CEO will front that meeting, and you need to make sure you've done your homework correctly and you've presented correctly and you've structured your presentation the right way. But he's going to want to drill down. He's going to want to know who the rest of the team are, what their experience is, how you work with them, what the relationships have been, and where you see that team growing. And it's quite important that you get the key core team at the start right, because you want to make sure that they are people who have the ability to grow into a director of a section of your company. That they're not going to be limited to just doing what's on the table right now. So my advice back in terms of the first meeting with your investor is be prepared, go in there correct, present yourself correctly, get all the basics in time, have your business card. It's these little tiny minutiae things which make you look a bit of a plonker, to be put it frankly. Don't turn up to an investor meeting and not have a business card. Don't turn up to an investor meeting and not know what address you're going to meet him at. Turn up late. It's those sort of basics for a start. And then just, as I said previously, make sure your business plan is nailed. Make sure you've gone through with a fine-tooth comb. You can justify those figures. You can justify your projections. You know what the issues are going to be. And be frank. Don't go and, make out that the market is easier than it really is. Tell the investor that you see these are what your big issues are going to be. Be frank about what your issues are going to be. If it is a nap you've come up with, be frank about the fact that there is God knows how many other hundreds of thousands of apps out there, and you're not quite sure about how you're going to position it and how the marketing strategy is going to be. And look at doing things a little bit different.